They say age steals your strength, but it sharpens your senses in ways the young never understand. I'm Eleanor Whitfield, born in 1942 in Hobart, Tasmania. Back in my 70s, I endured something most people would never believe, the very family I raised tried to strip me of everything. I felt betrayed, but then something happened that turned betrayal into strategy. Today, at 83, sitting by the window of my old cottage in Launceston, I'm finally sharing this because silence nearly cost me my life. If you're listening, drop your city below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my story, because it might just save someone you love. It was late autumn, the kind where the nights bite through the curtains no matter how thick they are. My grandson Oliver and his girlfriend Freya thought I was asleep. They didn't know how lightly I rested these days. Age does it you sleep shallowly, the creak of a floorboard, or the change of air wakes you. That night, I kept my breathing slow, steady, like the measured breath of a woman sunk deep in dreams. Through my half-closed eyes, I saw the faint light of a torch flicker against my dresser. Oliver's voice was a whisper, harsh and impatient. Check. Her purse. The keys have to be there. Freya moved with a smug little giggle, as though stealing from her grandmother was a kind of game. She won't even know. The old bat can't hear. But I heard every word. My hearing wasn't what it once was, but my instincts were sharper than theirs. They didn't know I had left the keys earlier that day at the police station with Officer Hughes, an old family friend who'd promised to keep watch after I mentioned how uneasy I felt around Oliver. He'd laughed kindly, saying, "Better safe than sorry, Eleanor." Let them try to find what isn't there. Watching Oliver's frustration when he found my key pouch empty was like watching a fish gasp without water. He cursed under his breath. Rummaging through drawers, my handbag, even under my pillow while I kept my eyes shut and my breath steady. Nothing. Freya muttered. "Maybe she keeps them in some lockbox," Oliver hissed. "She's too dumb for that. They've got to be here somewhere." Inside me, anger burned, but I didn't move. I wanted them to think they were winning, because the greatest weapon of all is being underestimated. When they finally slunk out, whispering curses, I opened my eyes to the ceiling and felt the weight of it all. These weren't strangers breaking in. These were children I had held as babies, fed at my table, clothed when their own parents failed them. To be treated like an obstacle, like a safe to crack open, slice deeper than any knife could. The next morning, I poured myself tea with trembling hands. My son Marcus's words rang in my head from months earlier. "Mom, you're getting forgetful. Maybe it's time you let us help with the finances." Back then, I brushed it off as a concern. But paired with last night's attempted theft, I saw a pattern. Marcus and his wife Alora had been circling me for years like vultures, waiting for a slip, a signature, a surrender. I refused to surrender, so I began planning. First, I bought a small set of cameras online, one small enough to hide behind books, in the lacework of shelves, and even inside the old porcelain vase in the hallway. The delivery boy laughed when I signed the receipt. "Security for this quiet street, ma'am," I smiled back, hiding the tremor in my chest. Sometimes danger lives inside the house, not outside. That week, Oliver and Freya lounged in my living room, eating my biscuits, spilling crumbs into the rug as though they owned the place. Oliver slouched with his muddy shoes on my coffee table, the one my late husband restored with his own hands. Freya scrolled through her phone, ignoring my presence entirely. "Gran," Oliver said lazily, "you should give me a copy of your house key. You know, in case of emergencies." I stirred sugar into my tea and kept my voice even. "The only emergencies I see are the ones you keep bringing to my door." Freya snickered, nudging him. She's got a tongue on her after all. Inside, I wanted to scream, but instead I noted the way Oliver's eyes hardened, how he hated being denied. My cameras blinked silently from their hidden corners, capturing it all. Later that night, I drove myself slowly, carefully to Officer Hughes's station. He poured me coffee in a chipped mug, his face serious as I laid out my fears. "Eleanor," He said, if what you're saying is true, this is more than family squabbles. This is financial exploitation, and it's a crime. Keep documenting everything. Don't confront them yet. Let them bury themselves with their own actions. I nodded, clutching the warm mug. My heart ached that it had come to this, but I knew. He was right. Back at home, Freya started testing me. She would move my medication bottles, then smirk when I couldn't find them. She would whisper, "You're losing it, aren't you?" As though she were planting weeds in the soil of my mind. Oliver followed her lead, hiding bills, making me doubt whether I had paid them. They wanted me confused, dependent, pliable. But my cameras told the truth. Every cruel grin, every whispered insult, every attempt to make me feel less than human, they were all caught in quiet, undeniable clarity. One afternoon, I overheard Oliver on the phone. He paced my veranda, thinking I couldn't hear. She's got more than 90 grand left in savings. Once Dad sorts the papers, it's ours. Freya and I are set. 90 grand, to them, it was a prize. To me, it was the savings of decades, the careful stitch of widowhood and sacrifice. I clutched the edge of the curtain, biting my lip to keep from storming out. Let them think I was powerless. I reminded myself. Let them think they were clever. The moment of truth would come. That night, I sat by my late husband's photograph. "Arthur," I whispered, "they think I'm weak, but you knew me best. You knew I would never fold." I touched the glass frame, a silent vow between us. My world shrank in some ways. My home felt less like a sanctuary, more like a battlefield. But it also sharpened my focus. Every meal I cooked, every quiet evening by the radio, I was gathering strength. I took long walks in the neighborhood, waving to Mrs. Clark across the road, buying bread from the corner bakery, smiling at children playing in the park. I clung to those simple kindnesses because they reminded me I was more than the target my family painted me to be. And beneath it all, the evidence grew. Hours of footage, whispered threats, my own detailed journal with dates and times. I kept copies of my bank statements, highlighting withdrawals I hadn't made. I photocopied every letter Marcus had pushed across my table, urging me to sign. Away responsibility. I wasn't powerless. I was preparing. The final straw of that first chapter came one cold evening when Oliver tried again. I woke to the sound of rattling at my bedroom door. He was testing the lock. My chest pounded. But I stayed quiet. When he finally gave up, muttering to Freya that I was getting paranoid with all the locks, I pressed my hand to my heart. My cameras had caught it all. That was the night I knew this wasn't just about protecting myself. It was about taking back my dignity. They thought I was asleep, but I was wide awake, sharper than ever. And little did they know, every secret they thought they'd hidden was already mine to expose. The morning after Oliver rattled my bedroom door, I sat at my kitchen table with a steaming cup of black tea, my notebook spread wide before me. The cameras had done their job. I now had footage of his attempt to break into my room. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with a rising sense of power I hadn't felt in years. They thought they were pulling the strings, but the truth was, I was weaving a net around them, one thin thread at a time. It wasn't long before Marcus, my son, and his wife Alara decided to visit. They never came without an agenda, and I had learned to prepare myself for their brand of politeness. They arrived in their polished sedan, Marcus with his tailored jacket, Alara with her pearls and calculating smile. They swept into my home like they owned it, their perfume and cologne choking out the familiar scent of lavender that usually comforted me. "Mom," Marcus began, taking my hands with exaggerated tenderness, "we've been thinking a lot about your future." I smiled thinly. "My future is here, Marcus, in this house, just as my past has been." He chuckled as though I were a child insisting on fairy tales. "Of course, Mom, but things are getting complicated. Bills, maintenance, healthcare, it's too much for you. It would be easier if you let us handle it all." Alara slid a folder across the table, her manicured nails tapping lightly. It's just a few documents to make sure you're taken care of. We wouldn't want anything to fall. I looked at the folder, but didn't touch it. Inside, I knew, were papers designed to strip me of control, power of attorney, property transfers, all the ways they could quietly erase my autonomy. Marcus, I said softly, do you remember? When you were 12, and you wanted to go on that school trip to Sydney. You begged, and your father said no, but I scraped together every spare dollar so you could go. Do you remember the postcards you sent me? His smile faltered. Mom, that was a long time ago. Yes, I said, locking eyes with him. But I remember everything I've done for this family. And I am not ready to hand over my life to anyone. The air grew tense, the polite masks slipping for just a moment. Alara's jaw tightened. Marcus withdrew his hands, and the folder sat there like a snake coiled between us. Think about it, Alara said coldly, her voice sugar-coated but edged like glass. You can't hold on forever. When they left, I carried the folder into my study, placed it in a drawer, and wrote in my notebook, Marcus and Alara attempt 3, witnessed, recorded conversation via vase camera. The footage from that afternoon caught every word, every smile that didn't reach their eyes. I knew then. I couldn't fight this battle alone. That evening, I called Helen Schuster, my lawyer of more than 20 years. Helen had been with me through Arthur's passing, through the sale of our small vineyard, through the wills and trusts we drafted long ago. She was steady, sharp, and loyal. When she arrived the next day, I poured her tea in my kitchen. She listened carefully as I explained everything: the late-night attempts, the stolen bills, the folder Marcus pushed toward me. Eleanor, she said finally, her tone firm. We're going to secure everything. Your finances, your property, your will. We'll make it ironclad. But you mustn't sign a single thing they give you, no matter how harmless it looks. I nodded, relief warming my chest. I haven't, and I won't. Helen smiled, scribbling notes. Good. Now, the footage you said you've been recording. I slid a USB drive across the table. Every insult, every attempt. It's all here. Her eyebrows lifted. You've done more groundwork than most clients ever manage. This isn't just suspicion, Eleanor. This is the case. That night, I slept easier, though Oliver and Freya still skulked in the house like shadows. They hadn't yet realized I was preparing their downfall, but Freya's cruelty escalated. She began mocking me outright, laughing when I misplaced my glasses, whispering to Oliver that I was losing it. Once she poured salt into my sugar jar, watching silently as I gagged on my morning tea. When I confronted her, she smiled sweetly. Maybe you should label things better, Grandma. Old age. You know, I didn't respond. I wrote it down. My camera saw the switch. Meanwhile, Oliver grew bolder with my bank cards. I noticed small withdrawals at first, $50 here, $80 there. Then larger ones. He assumed I wouldn't notice. But I had already moved most of my savings into a separate account Helen helped me set up, one Oliver couldn't touch. Each theft was recorded in my notes and confirmed with my statements. One afternoon, as I walked back from the pharmacy, Officer Hughes spotted me. He pulled over, leaning out his window. How are things, Eleanor? I sighed. The storm is still inside my house. Richard, his face softened. Keep gathering. When it's time, we'll step in. You're not alone. Those words carried me through the following weeks. Because as Marcus and Alara returned, this time with sharper insistence, Oliver and Freya's cruelty grew more reckless. My home no longer felt like a refuge. It felt like contested territory. I caught Oliver sneaking into my study, rifling through drawers. I watched Freya pocket jewelry from my dresser, smirking at her reflection in the mirror. Each time, I resisted the urge to shout. Each time, I told myself, patience. The day Marcus finally lost his temper stands out vividly. He slammed his hand on my table, the folder of documents spread before him. Mom, stop being stubborn. We're trying to help you. You can't do this forever. I leaned forward, my voice calm but steady. Marcus, help doesn't come with chains. I'm not signing anything, ever. His face darkened. Then don't come crying when you can't manage anymore. When they stormed out, I whispered to myself, this is the evidence they will hang themselves with. Through it all, I clung to the little rituals that reminded me who I was. Tending the roses Arthur planted, baking scones for Mrs. Clark's grandchildren, listening to the crackle of the old radio. I refused to let them strip me of my humanity, but inside, I was sharpening my resolve. My allies Helen and Hughes were ready. My evidence was airtight. My patience had limits, and the day was fast approaching when the shadows in my own home would finally face the light. The day it all came to a head began quietly, as many reckonings do. The house smelled of fresh bread, and the morning sun filtered gently through my lace curtains. On the surface, everything looked ordinary. But in my study drawer sat a folder thicker than Marcus's my own, filled with photographs, statements, USB drives, and written notes spanning months. My allies were ready, and so was I. Oliver stumbled into the kitchen that morning, his hair messy, eyes red from whatever mischief kept him out so late. He grabbed my wallet from the counter without even glancing at me. That was his final mistake. I had left it there deliberately, empty except for a folded piece of paper. He flipped it open, expecting cash, but froze when he saw the single sentence I'd written. I know everything. He threw it back down, glaring at me. What's this supposed to mean? I sipped my tea, meeting his eyes without flinching. It means the game is over, Oliver. Before he could respond, a knock rattled. The front door. Freya's laughter floated down the hall as she hurried to answer, clearly expecting a parcel or one of her friends. Instead, she opened the door to Officer Hughes and to officials from Adult Protective Services. Their presence filled the hallway with an authority my family had never faced. What's going on? Oliver snapped, stepping back. Hughes's voice was calm but firm. Oliver Whitfield, we need you to sit down. There have been reports of financial and psychological abuse in this household. Freya's smile faltered. This is ridiculous. She's just confused. Eleanor's, I am not confused. I interrupted, rising to my feet. My voice carried with a steadiness that silenced the room. I have spent months documenting every word, every theft, every attempt to strip me of my independence, and I'm done being silent. I placed my thick folder on the table with a thud. Helen arrived just then, stepping in with her briefcase. Gentlemen, she said smoothly, here's the complete documentation, hidden camera footage, bank statements, witness testimony. It will show exactly what's been happening here. Marcus and Alara arrived minutes later, walking into a storm they hadn't expected. Alara's pearls glinted in the sunlight as she froze, taking in the officials seated in my lounge. Marcus blanched. Mum, what is all this? It's the truth, I said. The truth you've all tried to bury under lies and papers and stolen trust. You thought I was blind, but I was watching. You thought I was deaf, but I was listening. And you thought I was weak, but I was building my strength in silence. Oliver shouted, she's lying. She's setting us up. Helen slid a flash drive across the table. The footage speaks for itself. One by one, the officials watched. Clips of Oliver rifling through my drawers, Freya mocking me, Marcus slamming his hand on my table, Alara pushing documents into my hands. The room filled with their voices replayed on screen, undeniable and damning. Silence stretched after the last clip, broken only by Hughes's voice. This is exploitation. Plain and simple. Alara's composure cracked. We were only trying to help. She's old. She can't. I can. I cut in sharply. I can cook my meals. I can pay my bills. I can tend my roses and walk to the bakery and live my life. What I cannot and will not do is be treated like a burden, a wallet, or a child. For the first time in years, I felt taller, stronger, as though Arthur's spirit stood behind me, lending me his courage. The officials acted swiftly. Oliver and Freya were ordered to leave my home immediately. Their protests echoed through the hallway as Hugh stood by, unflinching. Marcus and Elara were warned of legal consequences should they continue pressuring me or attempting to seize control of my assets. Helen filed restraining orders that same afternoon, binding their threats with the weight of law. When the door finally closed behind them, the silence in my home felt different, lighter, freer, sacred again. I sank into my armchair, exhaustion and relief washing over me in equal measure. Hughes gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. You did it, Eleanor. You took back your life. That night, I lit candles in the living room and brewed chamomile tea. For the first time in months, I sat in peace, listening to the quiet tick of the clock. My home felt like mine again. Every corner safe, every shadow cleared. I walked slowly to Arthur's photograph, whispering, "We're safe now. They can't hurt me anymore." But it wasn't just about me. It was about anyone who had ever been silenced, made to feel small in their own home, manipulated by the very people they loved. My story was no longer just mine. It was a warning and a lesson. Weeks passed, and I began reclaiming not just my house, but myself. I baked bread for neighbors again, returned to church on Sundays, laughed with Mrs. Clark's grandchildren as they played on my porch. My world, once shrunken by fear, stretched open. When I think back to that night when Oliver and Freya crept into my room believing I was asleep, I almost smile. They saw a frail old woman they thought they could outwit. What they didn't see was the quiet fire inside me, the patience that became my greatest weapon, the silence that let me plan their undoing. Age doesn't strip us of strength, it reshapes it. My strength wasn't in my hands or my voice, but in my patience, my preparation, and my refusal to surrender. So if you're listening to my story right now, know this: silence can be powerful, but only if you use it to prepare for the moment. You must finally speak. When that moment comes, speak with all the truth you've carried and let it set you free. Moral lesson: true strength lies not in loud defiance, but in quiet preparation, patient endurance, and the courage to reclaim dignity. If this touched you, like this video, subscribe to the channel, share with friends, and comment your own lesson below.